Good, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Hi, Daniela. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good to see you. It's been a while.
We will get started in 1 minute. And I know our team wanted to share a little bit of context today about our relationship with the Alliance for Early Success and sort of frame the conversation before we jump into your presentation. Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 9:30 call. We are going to hear a presentation from Daniela from the Alliance for Early Success today. I wanted to share a little bit of context about how strategies is sort of connected to the Alliance for Early Success, and I can share sort of personally my experience over the fa past 5 years and just how much of a benefit being a part of this 50 state network has been. So the Alliance for Early Success is one of Strategies for Children's funders. They fund a early childhood advocate in all 50 states, which is incredible because it's created this sort of learning community, this network of advocates that are working on things from early education and care to child and maternal health, economic supports for families that are all sort of moving in the same direction. And over the past 5 years, I think being able to learn from the other advocates, see examples of what's happening in other states, bright spots and challenges. The Alliance holds a national conference, which is always such an amazing resource. So, I'm happy to turn it over to, I saw Albert was on the call too. I'm not sure if Albert wants to share a little bit as well, but happy to turn it over to Daniela to talk a little bit more about technical assistance and their sort of responsive supports, but wanted to sort of frame that conversation within the context of this sort of national learning community, this national funder, and all of the sort of relationships that we've had for the past few years. So, Daniela, do you want to say a little bit about the Alliance sort of broadly, and then feel free to introduce yourself? We always start with, who you are and how you came to be in your current role, so you can give us a little bit of your history, and then the slide sharing is turned on.
Thanks, Marissa. And you really gave a really great summary of who the Alliance is. And Marissa touched on the network and the connections. And really, that's the crux and that's the underbelly of the Alliance. It really is powered. Although we are funders, we are different kinds of funders because we're really driving those connections, those cross-state connections. And Strategies for Children has been an Alliance grantee for many, many years, way before my time. But building connections even with new folks and supporting even new early childhood advocates like myself when I came into the Alliance. It's been a huge, powerful resource. And so before I go into my slides, that gives more of an explanation of the Alliance. I'll tell you all about myself. My name's Daniela Villasmil, and I'm based out of Miami, Florida, born and raised. And since I was little, my dream was always to be a teacher. And so I've had an interesting journey getting to this policy and advocacy space. No career is linear, and that has been mine. And in high school, I had the opportunity we had an on campus early childhood education center, so a full functioning child care center. A lot of community children, a couple of teachers' children attended, and it allowed us as students to learn what it is to manage, to teach, to run a preschool. And that was an amazing experience. And I got to graduate with my 40 hours required by the Department of Children and Families in Florida in order to teach or assist in a preschool, and also my child development associate. And so I did the observation, I took the exams, I did the binder. I don't know if folks still do the binder for their CDA. And that really allowed me to have a stronger perspective of what it means to be an educator, an early educator. And so then in college, I worked as the afternoon lead teacher at a child care center locally in Tallahassee. I went to Florida State, go Noles. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then just with classes, it was a little difficult. But I had a little bit of a setback. So I came in as an elementary education major and I didn't get into that program. I got into the social studies education program. And knowing that I didn't want to teach social studies or teach high school or middle school, I was at a crossroads and I remember sitting at the registrar's office just with a binder and looking through all the majors and seeing and trying to understand what could I do while still remaining close to my passions, which was working with children in early education settings. And so I ended up finding a public policy degree, and that was something that changed my whole life. And I focused my efforts always on early childhood, Head Start, and my research. And I graduated December 2019. And as we all know, what happened in spring of 2020, the pandemic hit. And so it's been so unlinear, my career, whether it's because of COVID or because of these different things, but it's truly led me here. I interned at an organization in Florida, a child advocacy organization in Florida, very similar to Strategies for Children. They're actually our Alliance grantees. And so that gave me a stronger perspective on working directly with parents and with providers and advocating for different services that I myself, as a child, I my family benefited from. And so, another piece of background: I'm a child of immigrants, and so my mom and my dad immigrated from Venezuela, and that experience really also shaped me to where I am here. And then I ended up getting the opportunity to work at the Alliance, which was really wonderful. And I've been here for the last 4 years, which time flies. Last year, I had the opportunity to work for the federal government full time at the Office of Early Childhood Development. And so I worked with the Preschool Development Grant Program, did a lot of work on mental health and behavioral health and the impact on young children and their parents and early educators, especially navigating post-COVID. And so I got to understand bureaucracy and what it means to do it at the federal level versus as a state advocate. So that's a big summary of who I am, and I'm happy to share, or if anybody has any questions before I share my PowerPoint.
There's no questions in the chat yet, but if you have any questions for Daniela, go ahead and, raise your hand or add them to the chat. We always love that question so much because you get to learn so much about the different guest speakers and hear more about your history, which is always great. Do you want to say a quick word just about your experience with the federal government last year? And I think that's such an interesting sort of like career path for that a lot of people I wasn't aware of. So,
Yeah, that was the most interesting experience in my career. I came in with so many different sort of stigmas and stereotypes about the feds and how slow it was, but the people who work in the federal government are some of the most passionate folks that understand and want to do more for folks in the States. And I was at an interesting time because it was right before the elections. And so really trying to work on the regs, the CCDF reg changes, working on the preschool development grants, making sure that states knew how to utilize their funds and maximize those funds. I learned how to be a stronger analyst. And so how to look at different pieces of research and how to apply those into a piece of policy that makes sense. And last year, a lot of the efforts really were focused on how do we engage persons with lived experience in a stronger, more equitable way through the federal government, which was really interesting seeing what tools are available through them and how limited they are because of procurement or because of these different federal budget processes that organizations like Strategies for Children has more leniency. And so encouraging the federal government also to partner with organizations like Strategies or even folks on the ground, whether it's childcare centers through listening sessions, etc. So happy
great.
to answer more.
And that was sort of a temporary position, right? Like you were kind of on loan for
Yes.
a period of time. Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
which was nice because I knew that I would come back to the Alliance and have more of that work. It's interesting because I came back to the Alliance very, I call it a little bit of baggage, where the federal government's so stringent on different rules. But as we know in nonprofits, we have more leniency and we're able to use our creative juices a little more. And so that's been also a switch because of working full time for the feds. It was a great experience, though. All right. Well, I will jump into my PowerPoint. Please bear with me as I pull this up. Um, let me, sorry. Let me make sure that I can share sound because I have a quick video for us today. And so you've heard me talk a little bit, but I wanted to share this really great video that our communications director Stinson created to really demonstrate what the Alliance is, and who we are as funders, and who we really are as a community, which is first and foremost before our funding power.
When it comes to young kids, we can't afford to think small. Parents, scientists, doctors, teachers, we all know that children's earliest years make a big difference in their futures. But we are a long way from each and every young child in our country having the opportunity to reach their full potential. Our early childhood system is unfair, and that's a big problem that can be fixed with a big movement for big change. So in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, the Alliance for Early Success is investing powerful resources and custom support that are paying big dividends. Across the country, the Alliance funds people who fight for policies that are best for young children and their families. They push state policymakers to permanently expand and fund access to the opportunities that lay the foundation for good health, early learning, and family economic security. And the Alliance connects these advocates with support tailored to their needs: policy experts, data analysts, messaging strategy, racial equity training, with people who can testify before legislatures, with people to answer their questions in real time, and with people in other states who fought the same fight and won big. The Alliance helps them catalyze big, diverse state coalitions that go big with bold visions. In state after state, this kind of support is leading to big voices and big wins, like more affordable, high-quality childcare, universal pre-K, permanent child tax credits, paid family leave, guaranteed health coverage for young kids and new moms. And it takes a big alliance: state advocates and their coalitions of parents and practitioners, responsive advisors, and bold donors and foundations who make big commitments to invest for the long haul. Working together as an Alliance for Early Success, this networked community is committed to big impact and to every child in every state realizing their full potential.
So in this video, we big, and it really is part of sort of these big changes, these big bold asks, encouraging advocates to really go out there and build build constituencies and catalyze change through their relationship efforts on the ground. And the Alliance truly supports those efforts, and whether it's through funding or the customized responsive support, or it's connecting states like Massachusetts to a state like Colorado to better understand what's going out west. How did you make that happen? And that's really who we are. It's making all of these cross-state connections. And there are three real goals of the Alliance. One, it's accelerating advocacy effectiveness. So making sure that you all as advocates are equipped and are able to really drive forward the changes that you need in your community, whether it's big or whether it's a small ask. Elevating anti-racist priorities. Our organization really centers anti-racism and what equity means, and what does that mean depending on the state context or the local context. And lastly, really expanding the state advocacy community. And so even in my last 4 years, I have seen such changes happen across states, and how they're bringing in more voices, bringing in voices who are directly impacted by the policies that organizations are taking to their state legislatures. And it's really exciting because this year we're actually at our 20-year, it's our 20-year anniversary. And so we would love to hear the alliance
When it comes to
how the alliance has impacted strategies. And so I wanted to bring in your voice, Marissa or Amy or Yanidis, or I saw Titus as well. If you can talk or just give a little bit of insight on whether you participated in a huddle or Marissa, you talked about connect. What did that mean and what connections did you make?
Yeah, I can kick this one off. So, um, there's two, I think, resources that have been especially helpful to me throughout the years. The first one that comes to mind is State Fed Connect, where the Alliance hosts I think it's yeah, monthly check-in meeting where all 50 state sort of grantees are together on a Zoom call as well as some national experts. So on those calls, you get to hear updates about what's happening in sort of the federal context. And on the 9:30 call, we've had Daniela come each month to share an update on sort of those federal updates. And then also some time for states to connect peer to peer to talk about their successes, their challenges. Sometimes there's a specific facilitated question. Sometimes it's sort of a little bit more open and the states can really drive the conversation. And, you know, when I think back to when I first started at Strategies for Children, attending that monthly call was a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. And I feel like I got so much information from that and really a lot of exposure to what was happening in early education, early childhood policy work across the country, and so many ideas on, that we could bring back to Massachusetts. So that's one piece that really stands out to me. But Neri or Titus, do you want to add something else?
Neri, do you have something?
I would just echo the importance of having Danielle on our 9:30 calls in this channel once a month. She's a resource from the Alliance, but then she's able to share her expertise and her just like grounding informative chats with us with through the 9:30 call for the state of Massachusetts. And then another thing that I you know can point out to are the Connect conferences. So like once a year the Alliance hosts a conference for all 50 states, and we get to travel to a select city and meet with our partners, our colleagues across the country, and learn from them best practices. And sometimes you find out, oh, Massachusetts is doing really well, or you know what, Massachusetts could probably be doing better in this way, from those direct conversations and in-person opportunities through the Connect conference. Zoom is great, obviously, but there's something about those in-person connections, even if it's just once a year, are super important.
So
I agree.
Titus said ditto in the chat.
perfect.
Nothing else. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks to the three of you. And it's also been really great to get to know the strategies team during Connect and in so many different places. I think we were at a conference, at an NEYC conference, and I got to chat with Marissa and with Amy. I recently saw Amy at another conference with state administrators and state advocates. And so really that's the power. It's those cross-state connections. I did see that Amy put in the chat to consider the different response support providers that are available. And this image right here, it's an active image on our website, which I'll add into the chat. But this just shows sort of the power of the Alliance Network. And you'll see some of the national organizations that are available to provide responsive support. And these RS providers range from childcare, their early childhood workforce, child tax credits, maternal health, etc. There's a full range, and I'll add those in the chat. And so responsive support is tailored to the state's needs, and it can be response to a crisis. It can be providing support for incremental change. They can support in testifying in front of the state legislature. They can support in writing a brief or um, bringing in information from other states. And so there's such a range of different ways that responsive support providers can help. And I added this quote from a testimony from you all around how the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment has helped with the early childhood agenda. Responsive support is available to our state advocates, to state agency folks, state administrators, etc. And however, even if you're in a child care center, in a child care setting, or in a local organization, working closely with Amy, Marissa, and the strategies team to access responsive support is one of the ways that it's available to a wide range of folks. Any questions on responsive support? I see a question in the chat. Can you share specific examples about how the grantees of the Alliance are using? Yes. So, for example, Montana, our Montana advocates have been trying to create sort of a land grant and create different ways to support their preschool programs at the state level. And the National Institute for Education Research, NEAR, has been able to testify and write info briefs that support Montana's efforts. Another example is your neighbors in Maine, your close neighbors upstate in Maine, had asked the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment for data on the early childhood workforce and what different levels of compensation are available for states with similar demographics. And so they were able to bring that in and write a national brief because the state legislature wanted different voices outside of the main advocates. I have my colleague Albert on the call as well. If you want to bring in your voice on different ways that RS has supported our advocates.
Yeah, I was actually wondering if anybody from the strategies team want to talk about how they work with Center for Study of Child Care Employment, because it was a kind of an extended sort of engagement that you guys had with them.
Yeah. So Albert, I just saw that you put the list of some of the national allies in the chat. Just so if folks are interested in some of those organizations, I think looking around on their websites and seeing some of the expertise that each of these organizations have and might help give you an idea of how they could partner or support Massachusetts as well. And then I'll also just say before I jump into the CFCCE example, but Titus added that we also had conversations with Child Trends for, I think, almost 2 years, talking a lot about data needs in Massachusetts and has really helped kind of inform some of our strategies around those pieces too. Yeah, so the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment at UC Berkeley, I think the story really starts there with the center creating a learning community focused on educator compensation a few years ago. And strategies in Massachusetts were one of the states that participated in that learning community and got a lot from those conversations, focusing in on healthcare benefits, on retirement, on how to increase salaries, strategies that different states had explored to do those various pieces. And as a follow-up to that, the early childhood agenda had a work group that was going to be focused on compensation for early educators. And so we reached out to the Center for the Study of Childcare Employment and asked them to kind of co-host that learning community with us. So they were involved on all the planning calls with us, helped us to kind of craft the monthly agendas and the direction of the learning community, kind of modeled it in some ways after their kind of national learning community and helped us to kind of direct where should Massachusetts go next. We took a look at a lot of the policy language that had been filed in Massachusetts related to compensation and specifically salaries and benefits, and have thought a lot about sort of what happens next. So now that that policy language passed last year, how do we start to think about implementation? And the center's been so helpful with some of those thoughts and conversations. Oh, yes. And Albert also shared that, Massachusetts has been an example, and a lot of what we have done on these national calls has been to share how impactful C3 has been for early educators and for providers in Massachusetts. And, I know we've talked about that a lot of states didn't continue funding, didn't continue their federal child care stabilization grant funding like Massachusetts did, which eventually has become now a statewide resource for the C3 grants. So that's been something that has been good to share with other state advocates.
Nice.
And even the 930 call itself has inspired other states in our network to do something similar. So
Advocates in
it's a
Florida.
two-way street.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Groups
Nana.
response support doesn't only come from the nationals, it comes from our state advocates. Our advocates in Florida have a similar 930 call bi-weekly, but they really learned from the strategies team. And I noticed the time. I did put my contact information in the chat. And I would love you all to, if you want to continue the conversation or have more questions, I know that this was a rapid fire round of who the Alliance is and what responsive support is. So feel free to contact me directly or work with the strategies team. I really do appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you all. This is fun and different from my day-to-day as well. Thanks, Marissa, Amy, Mary, and Titus.
Thanks, Daniela. I will also say that part of the secret sauce of the Alliance is the staff that works at the Alliance, and you all are a small but mighty team, and it's really been incredible to get to know you all. And I think that was one of the reasons why we were so excited about this, is just kind of getting a chance for the 930 callers to kind of have a relationship with you all as well and meet you and know, sort of like connect the face to the name, and if they have any questions, knowing that they can reach out to. Which connects to Donna's comment that I wanted to read in the chat, which is just that as someone still on the ground, I'm thinking about the power of hope that could be shared with educators and program leadership to know that there is this massive network working to make things better. Yeah, Daniela shared that, they're thinking about that a lot. I know we are. We've had a lot of conversations at some of these national conferences about how to and what is the best path to kind of involve the number ones that we talk about, the people who are working with children and families every day. Um, and I will also just share that Felicia Billy, who's on Strategies for Children's board now, but was at the time an advocacy network member, came with me to a sort of national conference. And one of her reflections after that was exactly what you're sharing, Donna, just like how much hope she felt from being in that space and seeing how many other people care about these issues and are working across the country to try and improve them. So it's a very point well taken. All right. I think we're good to go. So yeah, Titus just shared some thanks in the chat as well. But thank you, Albert. Thank you, Daniela. It was great to have you this morning. And then 930 callers, we are off closed tomorrow for Juneteenth. So we'll be back next week for the 930 call. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
great to meet you all.